Well, it's time. I just recently covered the timelines of the first two Fatal Frame games, so if you haven't checked those out yet, I suggest you do, although knowledge of them isn't really necessary to follow what's happening here. Once again, I'm going to be looking at the events of Fatal Frame 3 and try to piece everything into a neat chronological timeline, from the past events that caused all of the drama right up to the events of the game itself. But here's the thing. This game in particular is very vague about specific timelines, and trying to fit it in exactly with the other games requires, well, quite a bit of wrangling and even some hand-waving if you don't want to go crazy. Which I kind of have, trying to make everything fit nicely. So, keep in mind that the developers themselves never gave exact dates for many of these events, and many other dates are also mere suggestions. I'm taking what we know from the other games to try to pinpoint when things take place, but a lot of this is guesswork, and some things just don't really fit all that well. That being said, as always, I'll specify when we're guessing and when we're given an actual date. So, without further ado, let's head in. To anchor this game, we'll be speaking about past events and how they relate to Fatal Frame 3's big catastrophe, the Unleashing. This was when Kuze Reika caused the rift beneath Kuze Shrine to break free and consume the shrine itself. Now, this presents us with our first hurdle, as we're sadly not given a date for this event. One of Yu's notes in the game mentions that many large-scale avalanches took place in the Tohoku area during the late Edo period, and he relates this to Reika herself and how it was possible that a disaster like this was what caused her to lose her family. Now, after losing her family, Reika became a priestess at the shrine. We don't know her age, but she's probably in her late teens or early 20s. She also hasn't been at the shrine for terribly long by the time the Unleashing happens. The Edo period ended in 1867. So, if we assume that Yu's note is actually the truth, and not him also just taking a wild guess, well, the Unleashing probably happened around the mid to late 1860s. To make things easier, let's assume 1865. But here's where things get confusing, and as always, it's thanks to Dr. Aso. Roughly 2 decades before the Unleashing, Kashiwagi Akito, a folklorist, visits Kuze Shrine with a camera obscura. He could only have gotten this from Dr. Aso, meaning they were friends, and Dr. Aso was also far enough along in his career to have created a camera. If the Unleashing took place around 1865, that means Akito visited around 1845. We know from the later games that Dr. Aso likely died in the mid-1910s, and judging by the picture of him in the Aso Museum in Fatal Frame 4, he was somewhat elderly when he visited there in 1909. Let's be generous and say Dr. Aso was in his 70s when he died. That would mean he was probably born in the mid-1840s. Now, you see the problem here, right? That would mean Dr. Aso was born at the same time Akito was visiting Kuze Shrine with his camera. The timelines just don't fit. We kind of need Dr. Aso to be in his 90s when he died, pushing his birth back to the 1820s, for that to make sense. But that also doesn't really jive with what we know. Maybe the Unleashing took place in the early Meiji period then. If we push it up to 1875, then Akito would have visited in 1855. He was presumably around 20 at the time, making him born around 1835 in this case. If he was Dr. Aso's contemporary, and Dr. Aso was born around the same time, then Dr. Aso would have been around 80 when he died. That doesn't seem too out of line. This also fits better with him being friends with Makabe from Fatal Frame 2, who died sometime around 1910, probably, and was around 61 himself at the time. This would make him younger than Akito and Dr. Aso, but Still, not a big enough age gap that them being friends would be weird. So, do we go with the game hint that the unleashing happened in the late Edo period, which doesn't gel with the other games? Or do we ignore that and move it closer to modern times so it fits better with the other games? Personally, I'm going to do that, but because we're not given an official date, you're free to believe whichever you like. Either way, I'll be assuming the unleashing happened around 1875 and basing other times around that, but as always, we just don't know. So as I said, Akito visited Kuze Shrine around 20 years before the unleashing, so probably sometime around 1855. There, he met and fell in love with Kuze Kyoka, daughter of the head of the shrine, Yashu. He was invited there to basically, make a baby with her, which he did. While there, he took photos of her with his camera obscura, and before leaving, he gave her some Echo Stone earrings. They could use these earrings to talk to each other over long distances because they were magical or something. That's the least weird thing in these games. At any rate, Akito never got too far and was killed by Yashu shortly after parting ways with Kyoka. R.I.P. She then gave birth to their child, Kaname. Unfortunately for him, he was born a male in a family line that needed female heirs. So he was smuggled out to a nearby family and Kyoka gave her son some of the Echo Stone earrings Akito gave her. Sometime in the next decade, we're not told when, Kyoka then gave birth to Amane, Kaname's half-sister. Meanwhile, Kaname grew up in a village near the Kuze Shrine, alongside Yukishiro Reika, and the pair fell in love. Kaname left the village as a young man to study, but he gave his love one of the Echo Stone earrings as a memento. Those things sure got around. While he was gone, a disaster killed Reika's entire family, and with no family and no idea when Kaname might return, she decided to serve at the nearby Kuze Shrine as a tattooed priestess. This was shortly before the unleashing, so around 1875 by our timeline. Amane, Kaname's half-sister, became one of Reika's handmaidens. Reika speaks to Amane of her good friend and shows her the Echo Stone earring. Amane isn't stupid and realizes that Kaname, the older brother her mother told her about, who has these same earrings, is likely Reika's good friend. Around this same time, Kaname starts writing letters to Reika. No idea that her entire family died and that she's now serving as a priestess at the same shrine he was born in. He's now having dreams of a priestess who he chases but he can never see her face. He also dreams of his mother and finds himself wandering a dream mansion, aka the manner of sleep to those of us in the know. Kaname then meets with Dr. Aso himself, and he is, of course, researching the power of dreams at the time. He takes part in some experiments with him, and Dr. Aso makes note of his earrings. And by note, I mean he straight up uses one to modify his crystal receiver, aka a spirit stone radio, to craft the most effective version of said radio yet. I hope he asked first. Back at Kuze Shrine, Reika is now preparing for the many rituals that will eventually see her tattooed, cleansed, and then impaled so that she may carry all that pain into an eternal sleep. It's at this point that Kaname decides to head back to Kuze Shrine to see what all these dreams have been about, and, well, bad things happen. Thanks to some help from his sister, Amane, he comes across Reika in the Chamber of Thorns, the area where she's supposed to go into her eternal sleep. But Yashu, their grandmother and head of the shrine, shows up and kills him for his impudence or something. Naturally, this causes Reika's ritual to fail. Seeing her love die right in front of her allows the tattoos, and the pain they carry to seep into her eyes, and then the rift breaks free. The rift is basically the space between our living world and the other side, the land of the dead. It's the space in between. In the areas surrounding the Kuze Shrine, dreams are considered to exist in this same space, meaning that when you dream, you are, in essence, moving through the rift. And in those dreams, you can meet people on the other side. At any rate, the rift breaks free of its confines and consumes the shrine. But it's slow moving, so Yashu has time to stop it from expanding to the villagers outside. Shrine carpenters are summoned to build the Rift and Sleep Shrines to basically seal Kuze Shrine and the ever-expanding rift inside. This comes with great sacrifice, as the men are also sacrificed as human pillars inside. But their sacrifices weren't enough, and so the handmaidens were next, including Amane, who was punished for bringing Kaname into the shrine by being impaled by the other handmaidens first. Yashu is the last to die, as the rift finally claims all those who are still in the shrine at the time, and it is thus left abandoned, and for the most part, sealed shut. Sort of. It's at this point that the Manor of Sleep, the dream version of the shrine, comes into being. Remember how folks in this area believed that dreams shared the same space as the rift? Yeah. Over the next few decades, villages near the shrine are also abandoned, presumably because of the bad vibes in the area. By the early 1900s, only the manor remains. Yes, by this point people don't even remember that a shrine existed here. From the outside, it just looks like a strangely shaped manor. But legends claim that it's connected to the other side, and you can apparently meet the dead there because of it. However, if you meet the dead, they will spirit you away to the other side with them. Sometime around the end of the Edo period, or perhaps the start of the Meiji, a young woman starts to dream of the Manor of Sleep after her mother dies. And night after night, she continues dreaming of her in this manner, and each time she wakes up, a tattoo on her body gets larger and larger. She is perhaps the first person recorded to be suffering from the dream disease, or tattooed curse. This generally happens to people in the area who lose a loved one and then blame themselves for surviving. In the dreams, they are chased by a tattooed priestess, and when they wake up, they find a snake and holly tattoo gradually spreading over their body. As the curse progresses, they eventually spend more and more time asleep until they finally disappear, leaving behind nothing but ashes. They are fully taken into the Manor of Sleep, aka the Rift. At some point in the 1910s or 20s, Kuzuhara Makie and her daughter Kozue also fell victim to the curse after Makie's husband died. After a neighbor realized they hadn't been seen in a while, they went over and only found sooty remains in their house. And after that, more and more people in the area started to suffer the same fate. By the 1960s, the legend of the Manor of Sleep has become so well known that even occult magazines have spoken about it. It's even known in medical fields, with numerous patients simply disappearing and leaving behind black soot while under medical care. In 1962, Amakura Kei is born. He is the uncle of Mio and Mayu from Fatal Frame 2. In 1964, Asol Yu, a descendant of Dr. Asol, is born. The following year, Kurosawa Rei is born, and she is apparently the descendant of a shrine maiden who escaped the Mount Hikami disaster in Fatal Frame 5. These are some of our new characters for this game. Now let's jump forward to the early 1980s. While we don't have exact dates, sometime before the first Fatal Frame game, so before 1986, Kurosawa Rei and Asol Yu meet and get engaged. Amakura Kei also works with Hinasaki Mafuyu, doing editing and such for Takamine Junsei, that guy from the first game. And remember, Mafuyu is descended from Yae, the twin who escaped in the second game. And Mio and Mayu, Kei's nieces, are also descendants of Dr. Aso on their father's side, meaning they're actually related to Yu as well. We're all connected out here. But Mafuyu is also good friends with Yu, and the trio often share research and such. They were so close that Mafuyu even asked Yu to look after his sister should anything happen to him. Of course, he didn't really survive the events of Fatal Frame 1, so after that, Yu kept his promise and took Miku in. And so, they, Yu, and Miku started living together in late 1986. Miku and Dei became good friends, and Miku even started working for Dei, helping her with her photography work. Then, in July 1988, the events of Fatal Frame 2 take place. Around 1 month after escaping Minakami Village and losing her sister, Mio begins to dream of her. She falls victim to the tattooed curse. This pushes Kei to research what's happening to her, and he comes across the Manor of Sleep legend. He gets Yu to help him research it. It's also around this time that Kei actually visits the manor, aka Kuze Shrine, and finds the camera obscura left there by Akito. When Mio sees it, she has war flashbacks, so Kei then sends it to Yu. It has returned the Aso bloodline once again. But shortly after this, something horrifying happens. Dei and Yu are involved in a car crash, and Yu dies. In August 1988, Takigawa Yoshino is the sole survivor of a plane crash. She was surrounded by the dead for days until she was finally rescued, and needless to say, this left her deeply traumatized. On August 13th, she remarks in her diary that she dreamt of an abandoned house in the snow. She has also fallen victim to the Manor of Sleep. And so, on September 7th, 1988, we find ourselves at the start of the game. Once again, I won't really go into detail here of the plot of the game, but it takes place over the next 2 or so weeks. On September 7th, we have Dei and Miku visiting Kuze Shrine for work, and Dei having her first dream of the manor. September 8th, Dei finds the broken camera obscura that Kei found in Yu's room. Over the next few days, Mio is hospitalized and Kei also starts to dream of the Manor of Sleep, and a woman, Kyoka, who calls him Akito. It's likely that he gets infected by Mio, as the curse can be passed to others if you also dream of them in the manor with you. On September 9th, Dei visits Takigawa at the hospital, but she disappears right in front of her, leaving only black soot behind. On September 10th, Miku visits the hospital after hearing a woman disappeared and gets Takigawa's diary. And so she too falls victim to the curse, as she now also starts dreaming of the manor. Over the next few days, Dei learns of Mafuyu and how he went missing, and Miku's dreams get worse and worse. She's speedrunning the tattooed curse symptoms, and what usually takes a few months for other people is seemingly claiming Miku in just a few days. Her guilt over surviving and leaving Mafuyu behind in the Himuro mansion is that deep. Over the next week or so, Kei learns of Yu's death and finally decides to visit Dei in person after communicating via letters for a while. He thinks they can break this curse by once again impaling the tattooed priestess and putting her back to sleep for good. Unfortunately, he is mistaken, and this does nothing. But because he has Kaname's Echo Stone earring, Reika decides not to kill him. Around this same time, Miku meets with Mafuyu in the Manor of Sleep. They did something very forbidden and very gross. and it was at this point that Miku got pregnant. That child would go on to be Miyu from Fatal Frame 5, but that's for another timeline. With Miku and Kei now in a coma-like state, it's up to Day alone to finish this. And so she does, descending to the Chamber of Thorns and defeating Reika with the Camera Obscura. She then sends her across the abyss in a boat to the other side, and this frees all the other spirits trapped in the Manor of Sleep as well. The evil is defeated. While there, Day runs into Yu. He takes away her tattoos, the symbol of her pain, and carries that pain with him to the other side, telling Nei that she must live, and if she's alive, then a part of him will be too. When Nei, Miku, Kei, and Mio wake up, they're all cured and tattoos gone. They've come to an understanding after seeing their loved ones and will now live for them. Shortly after this, Kei brings Mio to see Nei and Miku, and they also visit Minakami Dam together. This is about the last we hear of them in the series. But in Fatal Frame 5 we learn that shortly after this, Miku quits her job and moves out of Nei's house so she can give birth to her daughter alone. But we'll go further into that in that timeline video. And that is the end of the Fatal Frame 3 timeline, starting all the way back in the mid-1800s or so, and going all the way until late 1988. But what did you guys think of this one? What was your favourite part of Fatal Frame 3? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.